Welcome to a special edition of our podcast. We're here in Chicago for Microsoft Ignite. I'm Fede Pacheco alongside my colleague and teammate and friend, Adam Burke. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, yeah, great to be here and do this in person.
That's right.
Exciting.
Yeah. I came to visit you all the way from Seattle.
I know.
To do this.
It's good. It's good.
We had a session yesterday at the Partner Hub. We presented a really interesting topic that I think you'll all be interested in. We've just connected with, I lost count, Adam. How many partners?
It's been a whirlwind. I mean, I was reflecting with my wife last night. I'm like, we got there at, 8? And I think got back to the hotel at 11. And it was nonstop since then. So it's the best. I mean, you have such an opportunity to maximize in-person connections, make new ones, super energized by this week.
For sure. And our session was really good. We had a huge line of partners asking to connect one-on-one, which is exactly what we love and we try to do every day of the year. So it was awesome to do a little bit of that in person. We have a few conversations set up for the next couple of days while we wrap up here at Ignite. The only bad news is that our session was not recorded. So we didn't get a chance to show that to our listeners, but we're here today recording just to give you all the content that we had for that day. And you can see on the comments and in the description of this conversation that you can get access to even the deck that we presented. But before we go into our session, it was definitely not the main keynote at Ignite, right? We had a few announcements and I asked Adam, hey Adam, what are your favorite ones? So I know you compiled a list for us. Can you tell us what those were?
Yeah, well, there's so much, hard to choose, but I would say my personal 3 were 1, Azure Local. Huge investments there. I think our partners that have bet on that, or maybe are looking at a new hypervisor option based on some of the industry changes. Feedback there has been incredible.
Yeah, tons of good feedback there. And if you want to check on Azure Local, there's a ton of sections that you can look for at the Ignite Hub, but you can also go to ak.ms/Azure Local.
Yeah, second thing I would say is Windows Server on Arc. And the launch of Windows Server 2025. Hot patching is amazing. I've been in technology for a bit, and that has been a feature request that people have had for many, many years. So to be able to bring that, especially I think in the environment we're in, where security is top of mind, is super exciting.
Yeah, and the product team is excited. We got to talk to them yesterday, right?
Yeah, they are.
So you can look at that at ak.ms/Windows Arc. Yeah,
and then the last thing I would say is really the hero motion in SMC is now, from the top is CSP, right? And so we work with CSP partners. So CSP, really positions our partners to be able to solve our customers' business problems through delivering, their unique services and value plus Microsoft solutions. And so super excited for the direction we are headed. And I think the incremental value that our partners are going to be able to offer to our joint customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can find the blog from our Chief Partner Officer, Nicole Deason. She published this about a week ago, and it has all the details on what Adam is mentioning. You can find that at ak.ms/CSP-news. And you can also find all these links in our description if this is a little too much to write down.
Yeah. So do you want to jump into kind of the key topics we shared with folks in the session?
That's right. Yeah, our session was called Profitable Modernization Paths from SPLA for ISVs and hybrid cloud partners. So we share a little bit of the multiple paths and opportunities. But we really started first sharing, why has this motion been so popular? So if you're a longtime subscriber of our podcast, you've heard some stories. Right now, I think only in the Americas, which is really where we kind of ignited this thing, pun intended, was we got over 500 partners and over 2,000 customers. And this is only talking specifically about SPLA partners. So this is really the target group that we talk to every day.
Yeah.
So we really started there speaking of why is this happening in the first place. Then we went to talk about how does that path look like and what are the options. We actually have some brand new content that we prepared. Yeah. And finally, we talked about Azure Arc, which we've talked about in this podcast. We gave it a fresh view with all the latest announcements and capabilities.
Yeah, and I thought you did a good job too, where AI is top of mind. So many folks are trying to figure out what AI means for them, their business. I thought you kind of layered in really well, some thoughts around how do you go from SPLA to AI? Because that can seem like a big jump, right? But I think you tie it together there.
That's right, because it's no surprise that Ignite has been full of AI announcements and AI topics. And when we talk about the 5 drivers of AI value, it's no surprise either that technology strategy is a core there. And our partners have been technology strategists for their customers for years. They've really built and established that relationship. So now when we talk about secure AI innovation, it is paramount that our partners continue to position themselves as a technology strategist.
Yeah.
What that means is, do they have the infrastructure set up for scale? And do they have the data ready and available to really maximize? There's never a problem about we don't have enough data. It's about like, is the data right to leverage it?
Yeah.
Right? So how do we position our partners for success? Because their customers are already thinking about this, but they're not necessarily talking to their existing partners in the business. So we know our partners are best because they understand the complex nature of what's going around, but we need to help our partners push this forward in the conversation and position themselves to help their customers to success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also helps to ground the conversation if you just sort of share like what are our assumptions in terms of partners are doing today, right? Like, and I think this will probably be maybe a little old hat for SPLA partners, but maybe you could just kind of share like where are we starting from and we'll touch on where we're going.
That's right, because I think the reality is every time you see a new change, now we're talking about the era of AI we're living in, right? It's no surprise for people that have been adapting and facing change all day. The reality is when you talk about the evolution of data and infrastructure, they have been working on it for years, and the reality is they have some in hybrid, some in multi-cloud, some on the edge, IoT. So they've been in many ways improvising, in many ways, being surprised by new technologies or changes in the market. So it's not really something that they can just change altogether from one day to another. There's a reason the data center optimization team exists, because we understand this might take years, right, to do. So being patient and shifting that mindset from like the silos and the technology depth that people might be at, and taking it, okay, how do we make this a programmatic process? And at the same time, leverage solutions that can help us be preventive, help us plan ahead, and really be risk, help us mitigate the risk is really what will drive for success. So the last thing that I'll say is like we're really believers in our investments in Azure, and specifically the investments that we've made in Azure Arc with our adaptive cloud.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, we talk about, modernization. Sometimes when you modernize, you have to do things differently. And I think that, as we look at kind of the journey that partners are on, helping them modernize profitably with new programs is really the key. And I think those 2 programs essentially are either the MCA or the CSP program. And in the partner type that goes towards that journey, I think really depends on what does their business look like, right? So if you're an ISV, if you essentially, leverage Microsoft products in your data center, but are offering, end-to-end solutions to customers where that customer's not really buying Windows, right? They're buying a solution that you're offering that has IP, fully baked in. A lot of times we see those partners modernize to become actually a customer of Microsoft's and leverage kind of the MCA options to start to unlock incremental value. And one of the benefits of doing that is SPLA is essentially a licensing program, but we don't have, the ability to provide hybrid solutions within that program, right? You kind of have to get outside of that to make that a success. The other option is really the CSP program for many of our MSPs, our hosters, our hybrid cloud providers. There's many names in those partners, I think, call or refer to themselves. But essentially, if you're a managed services provider, that's where you're going to want to look into CSP. And we have profitable modernization options there that we'll elaborate on maybe here in a minute, but essentially give them the keys to be able to start to offer new solutions, but each of those solutions essentially segmented by a single tenant or a single instance, if you will, per customer, right? So what we really find in this modernization journey is there's both a business and a technical problem that our partners need to solve, and kind of understanding where the business goes, they can then kind of get to the modernization aspects of what program or underlying program is like next for me, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think the biggest conclusion that I get from everything that you've shared so far is that really SPLA is not the hero motion for the adaptive cloud. It's been a great motion for years now, but now as we think about really being preventive, we need to really embrace the opportunities that I was mentioning, our investments in Azure, and specifically Azure Arc. If you're watching us on video, we're showing right now a slide that shows all the capabilities of what's possible with Azure Arc, even more now with the announcements on Windows, right? So it really comes down to scale, secure scale, of course. It comes down to leveraging your data and AI-enhanced governability and security. So can you talk a little bit now specifically, how are you seeing all these partners that we're working with embrace Azure Arc from a quick win?
Call it? Yeah, absolutely. I think, Arc has a ton of value. Arc is essentially a platform. Think of Arc as a tool that you can use to provide incremental value to your customers inside of your data center, right? So it's really an arc where you're arcing from Azure into a partner data center, a customer data center. You're taking the best of that infrastructure and bringing it there to you, enabling a whole new tool set and platform. And so if we think about the opportunity, I think a huge part of it is around SQL, right? SQL is, I would say, the lowest hanging fruit for our partners. And the reason is you can drive such incremental cost savings. You essentially get cloud economics inside your data center when it comes to Arc-enabled SQL, so that instead of paying monthly in SPLA, you're now paying hourly. You have the ability to provide incremental value to your customers with things like the best practices analyzer. You really kind of build out your SQL offering to your customers if you're an MSP, or reduce your costs internally as well if you're an ISV. In addition, we announced that Windows 2025 is now available through Arc as well. The beauty of Arc too is, especially if you're that hybrid cloud provider, like we mentioned earlier with Arc as a platform, you have the ability to bring incremental solutions to your customers like Sentinel, like Defender for Cloud. But oftentimes what we see is the business opportunity and the cost savings partners get with SQL Server is the jumping off point. And then once they have Arc as the platform, that's where they start to go a bit further there.
I would love to ask you, I think you did a really good job yesterday summarizing, okay, what does the path, like the operation look like when you're currently on SPLA and like doing all that reporting yourself? And how does that translate into Arc-enabled SQL?
Yeah, it's a great question. So essentially, you need an Azure subscription for Arc-enabled SQL. That's kind of the glue. And you can do that through MCA or through CSP. The process is very similar depending on your transaction type. The biggest thing with CSP is that you're going to have, a tenant per customer, you're going to have a single subscription per customer, and you're going to essentially Arc-enable those SQL servers. You don't have to reinstall SQL. You technically don't even need a reboot. You really just kind of have to glue that together. And from there, you can turn on those Arc functionality, the Arc functionality that enables that cloud billing. And it's really that simple. You kind of make that pivot, and then you stop going through kind of the SPLA world of walking through the data center, counting how many licenses you used. You kind of get out of that operational overhead, and it's automated. And the beauty of that is something that I would say our SPLA partners have asked us for years, is saying, hey, like, give me a tool that actually counts what I'm using. Like Arc does exactly that, right?
Yeah, you go from reporting SPLA revenue to actually building ACR, which is, if you're in CSP, that's what you want.
Totally, yeah. I think the nature of turning that SQL revenue into ACR really helps partners meet different requirements around solution designations or specializations. It all counts towards those goals, right? So we see partners being able to unlock incremental capabilities themselves towards their Azure targets simply by making that shift, which is huge value add for them. So Fede, we talked a lot about how we've met with our partners, able to meet with one of the partners in person that is really, I think, a market leader along this. And then we also met with the partner that, didn't have the same size estate, but they also got huge benefits. I think they called it a triple win. Maybe you want to start with that story?
Yeah, let's start with that one. Center Technologies is a great partner, right? They had 30 customers that they thought, they would forever stay on-prem, right, in their private cloud. And by introducing the Azure Arc motion, they were able to reignite those conversations with, I didn't do that on purpose, but I knew you would laugh.
Yeah.
They were able to reignite that conversation with them So what surprised them is even by introducing just this hybrid motion, they were able to migrate fully 2 of them.
Yeah.
The remaining 28 embraced Arc-enabled SQL, and they're just waiting to get them completely off their data center. And the reason why is because, as you said it, they call it a triple win. They are an indirect partner. They work with an indirect provider. They consider this such good economics that they were able to translate some of that cost to the end customer. On top of all the value you've already mentioned, they were able to save, of course, some cost themselves and for their indirect provider, SureWeb. So that really, it's a triple win, a triple benefit for them that they're really enjoying. And it's just a really good example of like how really sometimes we come to these Ignite presentations and events, and people say, yeah, I really like the future. I'm even obviously like big believer in AI, but I'm really comfortable in my data center today. So I'm not gonna have an urge to move right now. Well, the reality is when we really have that one-on-one conversation with them, we quickly find out that they just haven't realized all the opportunities. And we'll get to that in a minute, but I also want to touch upon the other story that you mentioned, which is Rackspace Technologies, right? We did a good project with them, and they're expecting $40 million of total cost of ownership savings over the next 3 years, and at 80% growth in Azure over that period of time. And that's by Arc enabling hundreds, if not thousands of their customers, right? It's really exciting when you see, a big believer in doing it at scale too.
Yeah, especially, Rackspace, they're one of the top partners within that hosting ecosystem, right? And so I think the fact that, they are sharing the value that this type of transition provides, I think really validates the market opportunity for all of our hosters to make this pivot.
And now I want to also jump about the direct economics. Of course, there's operational savings and all that, and you really get to focus on the value that you as an MSP can provide for your customers. But also there's direct savings once you are actually generating ACR or Azure Consumed Revenue on CSP, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so if you're buying as a customer of Microsoft, you get really instant cost savings, because if we look at the list price of SPLA, the estimated retail price, right? Because SPLA is sold through the indirect channel, as well as the price just that's on Azure.com, essentially the Azure calculator, those match up. But oftentimes, what our partners tell us is sometimes they may pay a little more for SPLA than estimated retail. And when it comes to the MCA, they have the ability to actually maybe pay less through an Azure commit discount. And so depending on kind of what commitments they make, that can vary. But essentially, SPLA doesn't have the same, opportunity in the channel that really Azure does if you're a customer. But CSP, I think, is actually a different story, and there's more programmatic stackable incentives that partners can look at and leverage today. Maybe you can share about that.
Yeah, and we've shared this slide before in our podcast. If you're a loyal subscriber, you've seen it. But there's about 34% of accumulated discounts across multiple motions from adding new customers in CSP and whatnot. On top of that, there's a data center optimization opportunity. So if they connect with our team, they might be eligible for additional savings. But just to put it very tangibly, if you are looking at an annual spend of $600,000 of SQL Enterprise and Standard, if you look at a 3-year motion that you're doing to move that into Azure through Azure Arc-enabled SQL, right, you are able to save approximately $400,000 over those 3 years. So it really becomes significant. It's almost a whole year of savings, and that's not considering, again, all the operational costs and really focusing yourself and your people on what matters most to your customers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity, and we're seeing so much momentum globally on this. Like a lot of our conversations that we're having here at Ignite are really, how do I do this specifically for myself, right? Partners that have questions that want to kind of talk about their unique scenario, but the momentum is here. It's a super exciting opportunity. Fede, we've shared the overview, I think, of our session, some key points that we tried to deliver. I know there's some resources online. Maybe you can share with partners that are listening, if they don't have the ability to kind of see the video here, to go get more information on these key topics.
Yeah, of course. There's an opportunity for us to connect, even if you weren't here at Ignite, right? If you missed us, you can connect through us and talk about your specific journey and opportunity through dco.microsoft.com. We also mentioned the Rackspace case study that is available at ak.ms/DCO with Rackspace. And if you are not subscribed to this podcast, you can do it not only on YouTube if you're watching, but in any podcast platform, because we have more conversations coming. We actually we'll record another episode here in Chicago at Ignite with a partner called RSM, and they'll share about their cloud transformation journey. That's going to be available pretty soon too. So if you are tired of listening to our voices, you'll hear from the partner themselves. Finally, what I'll say is if you're ready to jump into Arc, the best link I can give you is the Arc Jumpstart program. You can just search that on Bing or go to ak.ms/Arc Jumpstart.
Perfect.
Well, thank you for listening. This has been awesome. We're going to go back to the booth and connect with more partners. But stay tuned. As I said, we have another episode here at Ignite coming really soon. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Stay tuned for more insights and stories from Microsoft's Data Center Optimization team. Be sure to stay connected at dco.microsoft.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.